Tomorrow, as I know you're all aware, is Memorial Day, a day on which, in addition to picnics and mattress sales, we honor those in the armed forces who have given their lives in wars and conflicts. I have always been fond of Memorial Day because in the long ago time before holidays became attached to Mondays, Memorial Day was always May 30th, which was the birthday of my late father. When I was a small child, I thought that all the picnics were in his honor. He had served in World War II, but almost never spoke of it. My mother told my sister and me that he had been singled out to go to officer candidate school, but had declined because he did not want to order others to their deaths. He served out the war as a mess sergeant, nourishing those who would fight. It seems like the most natural thing in the world to honor those who gave their lives for us. We lionize their selflessness. And indeed, sacrifice for others is an essential trait of humans living together. But we do seem to honor it the most in the context of violence, and of the organized violence of war at that. Why? I had never asked myself that question until I read the book that I quoted from earlier, Barbara Ehrenreich's Blood Rights. Her exploration of some of the universal attitudes toward war and sacrifice changed my understanding of what it is to be human, not something that happens every day. Like many people, I've never understood why humans war with each other. Was there a fatal flaw in us? Some deep, aggressive drive that could never be overcome? Was it really noble to kill others in the name of a nation or a cause? Now, I came of age during the Vietnam War, and most of the people I knew opposed it. One cousin was a veteran. His younger brother fled to Canada and led a group of expatriate war resistors there. My sister's husband was refused his application as a conscientious objector for the dubious reason that his father worked for the Department of Defense, refused induction, and was arrested by the FBI when he was at his job at the Kankakee newspaper. The case was eventually dropped. My future husband and I were relieved when he drew a high draft number. Other friends were not so lucky. As a teenager, I felt I had been given a unique revelation. War is bad. If only the older generation would realize it. They, of course, had suffered through years of a world war and knew more about the issue than I ever would. But we young people saw the truth. We could save the world. How did we do? Of course, it's not so simple. War seems to be an ancient and intractable phenomenon. All my protesting, both in youth and age, doesn't seem to have had much effect. The drums are still beating, the weapons prepared. Can looking at it from a different point of view actually change anything? I don't know. But as my grandma used to say, it couldn't hurt. And that's where Ehrenreich's book comes in. She examines with great thoroughness and scholarship the usual explanations of why we fight and comes up with a radically different view. Most of the theories of war that we hear revolve around such ideas as competition for resources, fear of the stranger, territoriality, and even, as Freud would have it, an inborn death wish. But wars have been fought without any of these in operation, assuming that Freud perhaps made a mistake, as he did in so many things. If you think a minute, you can find examples. And these theories haven't moved us much when war seems to be the answer. They also don't account for the phenomenon that interests me today: why we honor those who died in battle more than, say, those who died in car crashes, or even saving someone from a fire. There's no 3-day weekend for those heroes, is there? There's something very deep and ancient in the way we feel about a particular type of sacrifice: the warrior, known or unknown, who dies on the field of battle, fighting for our country, for our freedom, for us. What's going on? We have an image of ourselves, of humankind, as powerful hunters. We're something special. We love to crow about how we're the top of the food chain, without wings, useful claws or teeth, natural armor, or great speed. Our wily brains and our brilliant tools set us apart from all other animals. We're number one. We're number one. But as Ehrenreich points out in the reading, it wasn't always that way. Were you startled to hear that? I certainly was when I first read her descriptions of our species' history. We began as prey. And the strong likelihood is that we evolved to survive in that situation, in a world with many huge carnivores, much stronger than our puny primate selves. We evolved to live close together, to protect each other. As a group, we could sometimes scare off the tiger, as birds join together to mob hawks who are trying to steal their young. Those early hominids, let me say that a little differently, those early hominids who didn't enjoy being part of the pack were probably picked off by wild animals, keeping their genes out of the pool, and thereby helping to create a species that felt safer in numbers: us. Some researchers theorize that most of our tools, such as fire and weapons, came not from hunting, but from defending ourselves from wild beasts. Perhaps even language developed for this purpose as a way to help organize the group in an emergency. And when a predator took a member of the band, a child or a feeble elder, surely even our long ago ancestors recognized that the sacrifice protected everyone else, at least for a day or two. Our ancestors probably were also scavengers, developing a complex relationship with animals. A saber-toothed cat could kill us, but it could also kill an antelope that we might get part of if we managed things well. Animals had an importance in our ancestors' lives that even the most dedicated dog and cat lovers among us can't quite fathom. Ever wonder why the gods of early religions so often had the heads of animals? Non-human creatures dealt out life and death. The beast gave, and the beast took away. Well, I don't have time to go into all that now, but if you're interested, I encourage you to read Blood Rites. That's R-I-T-E-S. There's a lot in there about the religious rituals of sacrifice that are common to all continents, and their likely relationship to our checkered past with the animal world, and I find it fascinating stuff. So, we were prey, and we were scavengers. Only after many hundreds of generations did we become predators, turning our tools to the task of hunting animals in our own right. It might have been the biggest change in the history of our species, even though it happened many, many thousands of years ago. Does the memory live within us? Are we still the weak rising up against the strong, daring to confront enemies and triumph with our skill and brains? We reenact this transformation over and over. Coming of age rites throughout the world take this form. The child who began life as helpless prey, possibly the most helpless of any animal, becomes a warrior, a predator. To become adults, the young must confront their fears and master them. Ever wonder why there are still so many children's stories about wolves and lions and tigers and bears? Oh my. Most urban American kids never run into these beasts outside a zoo, but somehow they still have the power to make us shiver. All right, so we finally became hunters, at least part of the time. But it's a big leap from hunting zebras to hunting fellow humans. How did this assertion of power over animals, the animals that can destroy us, transform into power over each other? And what is the connection to war? Well, no one knows for sure, of course, but there are interesting possibilities. For one, we feel more powerful in groups. Since we defeated predators through unity and solidarity, banding together helps alleviate our anxiety about attack, right? We create bands to belong to, whether mobs or armies. Joining together against an enemy makes us all feel powerful, just, right, and protected. And remember that those who banded together with others survived, conferred that trait unto us, their descendants. Those who were good leaders in a hunt were honored. In many cultures, you weren't considered an adult until you had successfully brought down an animal for food or defense. It's not uncommon around the world today for people to define manhood, at least in this way, including in some areas of the United States. But a few thousand years after the Ice Age, there was a huge drop in the worldwide population of wild animals, which might have been the reason why humans turned to herding and eventually to farming. Instead of hunting animals, raise your own, and you can eat them whenever you like. But by this time, the skills of the hunter are deeply ingrained in human societies. There was a lot of prestige for hunters. So very likely, people began raiding other bands for their domesticated animals and other goods, and of course for the honors they would have when they came home, or when they didn't come home. And we have, perhaps, the beginnings of war. It's an interesting speculation. As I say, no one knows for sure. And as you may have noticed, we still have war, now on a terrifying scale. What does it matter if we were once predators or prey? Well, I think it matters because our ideas of heroism, of sacrifice, go back a very long way. But they still drive a lot of our actions and decisions. Wars are fought and people die for honor and for their nation, for ideas. And I believe we should always examine our ideas, because sometimes they have an expiration date. Sometimes we should throw them out and get new ones. So let's look at the idea of sacrifice, literally a holy offering. The one who strays beyond the firelight and is taken by the wolves to keep everyone else safe. The animal or human who is slain and given to the gods to keep the powerful deities content and on our side. Sacrifices always involved blood and death. Its rituals unite the throng of worshipers. Religion literally means to bind together in awe, sorrow, and relief that they will live another day. A sheep on the altar of a temple, a soldier at the Battle of Waterloo. We recognize sacrifice. We feel its deep meaning. As Lincoln said in the Gettysburg Address, it is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. Giving up something of value for others is part of what makes us deeply human, whatever its historical origins, historic ones. Let us always honor our dead. But I wonder, can we honor as well the sacrifice that contains no violence? The smaller acts, heroic in their own way, that come from the vulnerable place of recognizing our fragility, our brief time on earth, our importance to one another. Let us think of other sacrifices. The tender father, like mine, sitting up with a sick child in the dismal hours of the night. The woman who gives up her evening's plans to listen to her friend lamenting her heartbreak. The immigrant parent who works long, grueling hours so that a son or daughter can become a doctor. The businessman who misses an appointment to help a stranger who has fallen in the street. If sacrifice means making something sacred, what could be more sacred than living and giving one's time and care to others? Giving up the urgency of one's own desires to work for a common good. Concept of the common good is out of fashion these days. We are more likely to hear, I got mine, so I don't care about you. I deserve everything I've got. And you would have more if you were as worthy as I am, if you worked as hard, prayed to the right God, weren't so different from me. But these very rationalizations reveal the truth. We feel guilty about our good fortune. Deep down, we recognize that our luck is, in part, the result of sacrifice of others, willing or not. We are the ones the lion didn't get. Why on earth are we not honoring those who have sacrificed for us, instead of treating them with contempt as weaklings and parasites? While we honor the sacrifices of those who died in war on this Memorial Day, let us also honor the enslaved people who built this country at the cost of their own freedom. Let us honor those who suffered in jail or exile to protest wars they believed to be unjust. Let us honor doctors and nurses who put themselves in danger to save lives in foreign lands and here. And government workers who sacrifice the big salaries they could earn elsewhere so that they can work to make life better for their fellow citizens. The list goes on and on. You can fill it in yourself. I just want to remind you today that sacrifice comes in many forms, and we should seek out and honor those who made it. Think about war. Think about what it brings us and what it costs. Think about its history and the needs it satisfies, and whether maybe, just maybe, we could find another way. We're all here just telling stories around the campfire, listening for the far-off growl of a hungry animal. We're still prey. But maybe we don't have to prey on each other. Maybe we can all make it through the night together. Amen.